This is part 6 in a 7-part examination of the fires that destroyed Lahaina Maui on August 8, 2023. The following information has been gleaned from satellite images, news outlets, drone video, still images, and most importantly, first-hand accounts concerning the fire which destroyed Lahaina. Considering the fact that a hurricane was cited as reason for the high winds that were experienced that day, the first area of concentration was the weather conditions in the area leading up to and on August 8. A specific weather tracking site called Ventusky was examined to ascertain conditions in the area. Its Doppler radar imagery revealed much sporadic activity, as can be seen in this video clip, captured at 3-hour intervals over time during that period. Upon zooming in for more detail, one type of Doppler radar return was noticed that was very odd. It was a circular pattern. The problem wasn't the fact that it was circular, the problem was that it was perfectly geometric. Being somewhat of an outdoors person, I've always paid attention to the weather and was quite familiar with what Doppler radar shows. It is never perfectly geometric. As is the usual case with Mother Nature, it tends to be random and messy. These returns were neither. This is an example of how Doppler radar usually appears. There is no suggestion of perfect geometry, only the return echo of dBz readings within the area indicating the possible amount of moisture within the system. This image is a slightly enhanced version of what was appearing in the area. The fact that it is almost perfectly circular and has concentric rings, each with its own dBz reading, is evident. This seems to be a radical departure from what we normally see in the weather data. After checking the area for numerous days before the 7th of August, none of these circular formations had occurred over Lahaina. Nor did they occur after the 10th. That all changed at 10 p.m. on the 7th of August and again at 11 p.m., when a perfectly circular bullseye pattern was captured over the area with concentric rings and dBz readings, both ranging from 0 through 20. Almost immediately things began to happen. Earlier that day, prior to the 2 bullseye patterns forming over Lahaina, other events were being observed. First was the odd cloud pattern.
These lines, and I made a note because the same day on the 7th in the afternoon there was a strange white haze over the whole island, and we all wondered, what is that haze? Where did that come from? I haven't seen a white haze as I drove across from Haiku to Kahului. It was very pronounced across the isthmus, and we made a mental note, okay, like we have strong winds, clouds coming at us in straight lines, and a funny haze. What's going on? What is this?
It is interesting to note that on that same afternoon, a 16-year-old niece who had spent the summer in Lahaina with family, told her aunt that she had noticed a sticky residue on the cars and homes just before she departed for her home in Canada. The statement about the observation was posted by @B Gardner 312 in response to a video about the fires. At precisely 10:47 p.m., timestamped on the original video, the Maui Olinda Bird Sanctuary was the victim of what was called an electrical arc, caused by a downed wire which created a fire. Fortunately, the caretakers were able to extinguish it. However, the video shows a few things which are odd, with the 3 red vertical lines being the most problematic. There are no electric poles visible, the fire appears to be deeper into the wooded area, no electrical fault was identified by Whisker Labs, until an hour later. At 11 p.m., the second bullseye formation is present. At 11:38 begins a series of some 34 electrical faults that occur between now and 6:39 Tuesday morning, when all data ceases. Also during that period, there are 2 significant faults at 2:44 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. Around midnight on the 7th, reports began to surface about a fire upcountry. It would result in damaging about 1,000 acres and require 50 individuals to seek shelter at an emergency center. 2 additional bullseye patterns were captured over the identical area of Lahaina, one at 1 a.m. and the other at 2 a.m. Coincidentally, CNN reported that a sensor network run by Whisker Labs detected an increasingly stressed utility grid on Maui beginning late August 7 and into the next morning, the company's CEO Bob Marshall told CNN on Wednesday. Could these two conditions be related? There is a site on Maui which belongs to the Air Force and does research into directed energy weapons. It is one of two such sites, with the other at Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. Known as the AMOS site, its activity, upon the following observations, may provide some important data for us. At 2:22, the AMOS laser is fired, and again at 2:28 and 2:31. There is no indication how long each burst was active. However, at 2:44 it is again active, but this time recorded as in that state for 17 minutes. Is it a coincidence that the start time is also the time of the first significant fault detected by Whisker Labs? Lisa Vorpal, a bank teller, woke to the sound of someone shuffling on her lanai. It was 3 a.m. when she looked out her bedroom window, along a dry, grassy slope, overlooking her slice of tropical paradise, and realized it was just the wind. CNN. At 3:02, the laser becomes inactive, and shortly after 3:25. A woman calls 911 and reports flames and smoke above Ho'oki'o. CNN. At 3:30, the second significant electrical fault is detected by Whisker Labs. At 4 a.m., another bullseye pattern was captured over the same area as before. Residents began to report, via video clips, that they had no power or cell phone coverage. At 4:30, another resident reported very high winds. At 4:57 a.m., different resident reported the location of a brush fire above the bypass near the intermediate school. A GO satellite will place the exact start point by detecting its heat signature. It was located just below the electric substation and along the road and ditch, across from the intermediate school. At 5 a.m., another bullseye pattern is seen over Lahaina. This, coincidentally, is also the time of the second of two major electrical faults detected by Whisker Labs. All total, there have been 34 detected faults between the night of the 7th until 5 a.m. on the 8th.
What our network shows and what we know is that the grid was incredibly stressed Monday night and throughout the day on Tuesday. So, it was trying to deal with the winds that it was encountering.
At 6:30, a GO satellite detects an actual fire up Lahaina Luna Road, across from the intermediate school, near the electric substation. At 6:33, high winds are again reported, and at 6:37, the fire is reported and logged in. At 6:39, all electrical monitoring data ends on Whisker Labs equipment. At 6:40, Jeff Sims, in an interview, indicates observing an abnormally hot force of wind coming down from the mountains. It is normally cool, he also indicated. Finally, at 6:41, police body cams show the fire in the field adjacent to Hukahua Street as they evacuate a resident. At 7 a.m., another bullseye formation was captured on Doppler radar over the same area. Other observations include residents describing wind-driven activity in the waters adjacent to the island. Another observation from someone offshore on his boat made the comment that there was a haze or dust cloud hanging over the island, thus becoming the third person to have stated that. There is also an image that shows smoke rising in the air from the morning brush fire upslope. At 8 a.m., still another formation is seen over the area. This time the DBZ reading has increased to 35, its maximum since it began Tuesday night. At 9:55, Maui County issues a statement that the morning brush fire has been 100% contained. Crews and equipment are diverted elsewhere. A small pumper is left on site as a precaution. At 10 a.m., a second bullseye pattern is captured with another maximum DBZ reading of 35. Something is in the air that is causing these readings, but it is not moisture. No rain was reported as having occurred that day. NEXRAD Doppler radar, the mainstay of weather forecasting, is strangely incomplete on this particular day. This image shows missing data as it scanned the coast of Maui on the 8th. The lack of coverage was caused either by something blocking the return signal, or that specific section was deleted from the data file. In any case, the missing data is exactly over the two fire sites of Lahaina and Kula. Coincidence? Considering all the other missing data that has been discovered, probably not. It also shows a partially circular pattern over the area, thus verifying the previous observation of circular formations that day. At 2 p.m., another bullseye Doppler radar image is captured over Lahaina. This time, the strength of the DBZ reading is at a maximum of 35. This will be the third identical reading in sequence that has been captured so far, with one at 8 a.m. and the other at 10 a.m. Is it a coincidence that the following events take place? First, just before the fire start, and second, an explosive start upslope. Here comes one of those departures from reality. We are told that the fire not only jumped the bypass and caught the grass on fire on the opposite side, it also changed direction as it did so. This site is interesting in that, on the bypass side, a fire truck was parked, with no hoses out, with no personnel to be seen while the fire raged at an angle toward a housing development. It is difficult to believe how such a fire path could be so explosive as in this next description, which occurred about a half hour to an hour before.
I was exhausted, and when I woke back up at like 2:30 or so, I smelled smoke again, and I went outside into the front of my house, which faces up the hill, up Lahaina Luna. My house was directly on Lahaina Luna just before the bypass interchange, facing Maka. And so I smell the smoke, and I look out there and I see the fire is back up there again where it started before. So my hunch is the original one didn't get put out all the way. I don't think it was a down power line, because the power had been out at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that little bitty fire that was at 8 o'clock or whatever it was like that, that would have been way bigger if it had been burning and had started from a down power line before 5 o'clock when the power went out. So it doesn't make sense about the power line being down. And my house was one of the first 3 to burn. And I'm telling you that I was standing in my yard and I got hit in the face with a massive wall of black smoke. It just came over the ridge behind my house super fast, burning embers, stones, dust, dirt, gravel, sticks, leaves, stuff that was on fire. High speed, ultra high speed, and incredible heat. Incredible. Like, I can't believe that much heat was coming from what I thought was a relatively young fire. To the point where I turned my body and ran into a little cubby in my house to shield myself from what felt like a blast, like a bomb blast or a fire tornado, something like that. I had time to grab my keys and jump in my car. When I backed my car out of my driveway, it was so black I couldn't see whether I was going to be running over somebody or not, but I saw flames coming across the street to me, coming down the mountain, and I just gunned it. I just got out of there.
Aside from what appears to be similar to a lightning signature, commonly seen in thick clouds containing particulate matter, there are 2 tremendous and extremely bright flashes that occur in the area up Lahaina Luna Road next to the bypass. Buried in the individual frames is one which may indicate electromagnetic interference with the image itself during the event. This next clip has 3 parts: normal speed, half speed, and then 1/10 speed. As it is slowed down, you may notice that the initial atmospheric disturbance is spherical in nature, is large, and there are 2 of them. This intense flash also shows up in another GOES product, which is tracking the ongoing fires. We will end this particular segment with video of the actual fires along Kahoma streams, which already indicates an extensive damage to the infrastructure which is beginning to take place. There is an additional observation that will be covered, although I am somewhat reluctant to disclose the data. It needs to be verified for yourselves. There is an incredibly bright zone within the black smoke that one would assume to be the sun. The problem is that if you check the position of the sun on the 8th of August, 23 over Lahaina, it seems to be in a different portion of the sky. It is also too low in the sky at this time, which is at 1500 hours or 3 p.m. The time was chosen based upon the statements of the previous individual who witnessed some sort of explosive fire event that swept through this same area and destroyed his residence. At this time, the sun should have been higher in the sky, and slightly to the left of the observer on the ground. If this interpretation is correct, what was this object? As indicated earlier, this flash may also have been captured by one of the GOES satellites during this period. This sequence will also provide us with additional data that may point to the use of an electromagnetic field over the area. So far, much of the data appears to show an event that began just across the bypass, which continued at an angle through the heart of the housing development towards Kahoma Stream and finally cutting across the upper part of the Emerald Plaza area. All areas of almost complete destruction.
I kept hearing this noise like a jet engine. It seems that a gas line has erupted up there and acting like a flamethrower. But the whole neighborhood is on fire and most of it is burnt to the ground. But there's a flame up there and it's a gas line. Every once in a while it sounds like a giant flamethrower. Nothing has crossed the channel yet. Well, there's some flying embers, but there's nothing to alight over here. And there it is again. Gas line.
Another challenge faced by one of the residents was his personal survival when the Kahoma Stream's fire hit. It may have been a part of the same blast that happened up Lahaina Luna Road near the bypass. Similar conditions were described as having happened and may have been part of an ongoing process that swept along a diagonal path from there towards the Emerald Plaza area. Here it is in his own words.
I sat down where those hangers are right there. That's where they went poof, and I was running about right there, and I just dived down like this. I had a shirt on, you know, I fucking dived down and just did a belly flip thing like this, because I know the air, you got to get down, you know what I mean?
So you were you just dove into the water there?
Yeah, right. Lay down, because you stand up, they hit you, you're dead. You go burst into flame, you know what I mean? Like, fuck, I'm hoping.
Was it just about this much water when you were in it?
Yeah.
And so that was enough. Do you think if that wasn't there, would you have survived without the water?
Nope, I don't think so. Maybe not.
So just enough of a trickle, it was enough to save you.
Right there, that was caught over. I got wet, and you know what I mean. And I just was, and I was lucky right then that it was the wind was, because when the wind would blow this stuff, and blow the fire down, it would be balls. It looked like I'd never seen nothing like
fire hail.
Yeah, fire hail coming at you. It's 70, 50 mile an hour wind, and you're like, whoa, you know. And when I seen that blow like that, I never seen nothing like that. It was like if you threw a match on like a charcoal fire, just like when you throw a match, that's what it went like, boom, and it was gone. And I had stuff that was like pictures of my father and mother that are dead, you know what I mean? And I thought, and I seen it go like that, and I was like, fucking, oh, this is serious. You had to, dodgeball with death.
Beginning at about around 2:30 p.m., this image is a single frame captured from the GOES 18 satellite loop that displays what was happening as the fires began. It runs from 2:31 p.m. to 5:56 p.m. local time. It shows an odd pattern within the clouds over the mountains of Maui. Why is it there? There were no conditions present that day to have caused lightning to occur. Is this another case where some sort of technology is being used? Here is the entire sequence between those hours. What can also be observed from the data is the existence of what appears to be an open wind corridor. Whether this is a natural occurrence, due to the mountain terrain, or it is actually a three-dimensional construct, is up for debate. The fact remains, this shape and opening will not change throughout the entire fire buildup on the 8th, despite the high winds that were present that day. This loop of individual GOES images illustrates what happened between approximately 2:31 p.m. through 5:56 p.m. It is apparent from the images that the opening has created the blowtorch effect that we see as the fires develop, for the massive smoke cloud drifting out to sea is exactly opposite to this formation. Numerous events have occurred so far. At 3:10, a small shed fire seems unresponsive to water. At 3:18, police shut down road up to Lahaina Maui. Evacuation order is issued below that area. At 3:30, a fire in Kahoma Streams was reported. At the same time, there is a fire near the bypass. On the south side of Lahaina, an individual at the homeless assistance area not only observes the developing black inferno, but captures something rather odd along its flank. Captured sometime after 4 p.m., this video shows a fast-moving object in the air on the south side of the fires. It is barely visible in the original due to its speed, and only becomes more apparent when the video is slowed down. It is difficult to even offer an explanation for this observation. We can only add it to the list of the activity that has been observed over Lahaina during this event. Also seen in the area during this same time period was a rather complex cloud formation. Its overall shape has remained relatively constant as it moved from the mountains toward the sea. This is odd unto itself, since the winds that day that are pushing the smoke out to sea should have destroyed its form, but it did not. It therefore must possess some substance. There is one explanation that comes to mind immediately, and that is an artificial plasma layer, or Bragg scatterer that allow frequencies to be reflected, in this case judging from the angle of its face, downward. It could also have been some sort of large, odd-shaped craft or drone. It appears to have similar characteristics with the bright object seen up Lahaina Luna Road we saw previously. This view is from the opposite side of the smoke wall. A final circular pattern over Lahaina was captured at 4 p.m., again with maximum dBz strength of 35. From his boat offshore, this resident captures video at 4 p.m. as the fires intensify. This was the first image that I came across, showing what should be a sunset out over the waters during the buildup of the fires in the afternoon at Lahaina. It struck me as a bit odd-looking, in that my own experience of many years did not provide me a memory of the sun ever looking like this. Additional imagery came my way in a video by Jennifer Joy Spring in which the exact same scene was captured. It provided some additional bizarre activity that must be experienced to be believed. Whatever this object was, it was recorded as changing size. It could be a glitch with the autofocus, but nothing else in the sequence gets larger. Here is another situation, where the sequence has been slowed down, and has provided us with a glimpse of activity that would have happened so rapidly, it would not have been noticed. At 4:11, Maui Police Department contacts the electric company about shutting off power to the grid. Miko replies it has been off since early morning. This will be one of a total of 18 calls to Miko throughout the day by police. At 4:17, evac order was received at Baker Street. At 4:24, the parking garage at the outlet mall erupts in fire, as does the outlet mall. At 4:32, a resident trying to escape the developing inferno along Front Street captures the streak in the sky. Was this a laser or plasma pulse, accidentally discovered in the image after the fact? At 4:43, there is a fire at the Tamaris facility, with a fire engine on scene attempting to extinguish it. At 4:46, GO satellite detects West Maui fire infrared temperature at 272 degrees Fahrenheit and police report burn victims. The entire neighborhood of Lahaina is engulfed in flames, and some police are picking up burn victims for transport to a medical facility. Slightly upslope, at Komomai Street, the fire has jumped the road there and is advancing quickly towards the ocean. At 4:50, Maui County announces that the EOC is fully activated, police chief not present, as is normally the case. At 5 p.m., the intensity of events continues. At 5:10, police report that people are trapped at another site. At 5:24, Maui police have maintained closure of an escape route out of Lahaina since 2:55 p.m. At 5:34, police report another fireman down and needs medical assistance. Location is Front Street and Laikia parking lot. At 5:40, fire is hitting Maula Wharf HNN. At 5:36, police report a 78-year-old man with burns to neck and legs. At 5:40, police report that the fire is hitting Maui Wharf already. At 5:44, police report traffic on Front Street on fire all the way to Market. All the houses are on fire HNN. The time period between about 3 to 6 p.m. has been a somewhat critical window to be able to allow cars an escape out of the oncoming firestorm. At 6:02, the mayor of Maui is on KITV stating that the road in and out of Lahaina is open, and has been since 5 o'clock. In reality, however, the entire area is gridlocked. At 6:10, Maui police have critical roads closed to through traffic, thus continually sending traffic back into harm's way. The fires have reached the water's edge along Front Street and have ignited both structures and cars, some with occupants still in them. Men, women, and children, fleeing the heat and smoke, have jumped into water or sheltered behind the rocks at the shoreline. Those in the water have grabbed on to any floating debris for some respite, with many being eventually carried out to sea. The time period between 6 p.m. and midnight becomes even more hellish. The fires, which have now reached the coastal water line, have ignited the boats in the harbor and many more structures along the coast. Anyone trying to leave their homes is faced with a gauntlet of intensely burning vehicles, homes, and people on foot trying to flee the area. One individual tweets the next day and partially describes the human cost. One such victim is captured in a video, probably losing her life from smoke inhalation. Sadly, there will be many more that will be seen when the sun rises the next day. The nightmare that is now Lahaina continues towards midnight. By 9:45 p.m., the Coast Guard, along with other vessels that had been moored offshore, and not affected by the fire, were on search and rescue. Although reports vary, some 14 individuals, including 2 children, were plucked from the waters that night. Countless others, who had drifted out and away from inshore, were lost. When morning would eventually come, others who had sought shelter amongst the breakwater rocks would be retrieved and bodies located. At 10:25 p.m., NASA's Land Imager captures this infrared fire signatures image showing the extent of the fire. At 11:52 p.m., there is a massive fire at the Waiоla Church in nearby Lahaina Hongwong Mission area. This historic event continues into Wednesday, the 9th. Let us review, at this point, what has transpired from about 1 p.m. on Monday the 7th and Tuesday the 8th at 12 midnight. We see multiple perfectly geometric designs in the shape of bullseyes captured by Doppler radar over Lahaina. The DBZ strength of those returns will build over the interval at least until 4 p.m., when they will reach a maximum of 35. The individual captures have been assembled and appear to show an increase in something which may be suspended in the air. The sequence is strikingly similar to what can also be found on the Air Force Research Lab website concerning directed energy devices. Between 2 and 2:30 p.m., a resident documents on video an explosive fire event that seems to start the major fires that will ensue. This is what Goes 18 saw concerning the ongoing fires. The following loop runs from 12 midnight to 9 a.m. Zulu time on August 9th. Adjusting for local time at Lahaina by subtracting 10 hours, we get an interval from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. on the 8th of August. It is the sequence of the infrared temperature signatures of fires at both Kula and Lahaina that were captured by the GOES satellite. The second loop is focused more over Lahaina as the fires develop. This is what occurred during that period of time. Contrary to statements by officials, the developing fire seems somewhat chaotic rather than sweeping from one point to another. An additional observation is that heat signatures are being detected over water as well as over land. Why is that? This GOES release shows the actual fires as they rage at both locations. It has been slowed to more accurately depict their progress over time. It is interesting to note how they display actual forms, similar again, to geometric figures such as circles, squares, or oval-shaped zones. Touted as capturing the actual fires that rage in Lahaina, the sequence when slowed down to 1/10 speed reveals these patterns. The overall pattern changes form from circular, to oblong, to rounded square and so on. But each pattern has the same underlying structure. That structure is a group of perfectly spaced parallel lines. No other portion of the entire image has these lines except for the location of the two fire areas themselves. At 11:30 p.m. on August 8, 23, the bottom part of this image was released and denoted as the infrared fire temperatures caused by the ongoing event in Lahaina. Some time later, the top portion of the image was released at a different time. Whether or not they are the same image, with one being somewhat cleaned up and enhanced, or are in reality different, is unknown. They do, however, provide more data for our endeavor. At the very least, given what we have seen so far, we can say without a doubt that there were some very odd and strange activities happening beginning on Monday the 7th until midnight on the 8th. Very high winds were present, even though the stated culprit of the extreme effect was a hurricane 550 miles away. Power was knocked out as well as any communication over telephone or internet. Water pressure to fight the fires became non-existent. But wait, there is more. Late in the night on the 8th or perhaps early on the morning of the 9th, some additional strange events occur. There is no time stamp as to actual hour, only that it was nighttime when it happened. One was located along Honoapalani Highway across from the small Pentecostal church with the roof damage. Two pieces of data emerge from this one event that we will deal with later. First, this is what was captured on video. Be prepared for some salty language. It is difficult to observe what just happened. I have purposefully cut the sequence to encompass only the main focal point of this segment. During the preceding part of the sequence, other what sound like smaller explosions are happening, along with multiple objects falling from the skies. This explosion was much louder, and took the observer on the ground by surprise. The sequence was slowed down to half and then 1/10 speed. This was the result. The second piece of data was the sound that emerged from the audio that resembles some sort of pattern, which is included at the end of this topic. Part of a trove of communications and events, assembled by the Attorney General's investigation, this entry caught my attention as I scanned the hundreds of individual entries in a spreadsheet provided online. The location is Ku'aialua Street, logged in at 15:31:46, which is just shy of 3:32 p.m. on the 8th. The text reads, "Fireball behind house, got out of area." This is the same area where we were introduced to the type of damage that was done on cars by the so-called wildfire, by Eric West, in one of his first videos. What were the firemen describing in the moment? Was it an actual ball of fire? If so, what was its size, and how was it created at that particular site? During this same dark period, some object was captured in the skies over Lahaina. It has an odd shape, and its presence may have been recorded a second time at another location, involved in something rather bizarre. Something similar may have been captured very close to the Shell station up Lahaina Luna Road, just below the substation in that same area. At least, that's where it seems to have occurred. I've tried to match all the surrounding landmarks. But not being from the area, and only having access to images on the ground that are not recent, there is not a 100% match. So, you will have to be the judge. If it isn't this specific Shell station, it is one somewhere, and the activity matches what seems to be happening around Lahaina. Is this an electrical surge or induction of energy into the electrical infrastructure? Surges should activate line fuses along the way. The result, however, appears to be exploding transformers. If we slow that sequence down a bit, it becomes evident that some sort of craft swoops into the frame in the upper right-hand corner, and either observes what is happening, or is a participant in what is transpiring. What is interesting is that there are actually drones that resemble this craft. The fires continue to destroy the area. At 12:56 a.m., larger structures are seen engulfed in flames, as well as vehicles in the immediate area. There is a strange bluish tint exhibited in part of the scene. At 1:30, a man steps out of his burning house, and is met by first responders in the area. He has burns on his body and requires medical assistance. A policeman takes him to the hospital in his cruiser. At 2:30, the Safeway supermarket and surrounding are engulfed in massive flame. This aerial view of the Lahaina area shot by someone on board a passenger jet passing over, shows the ongoing destruction. What appears as small embers are actually individual fires, still smoldering into the early morning hours. In this next image, we observe again a hint of blue in the residue of what was once someone's home. First light on the 9th reveals the utter destruction and desolation that was once Lahaina, It will be designated the worst event of its type in the United States in 100 years. There are still fires burning. A single boat in the harbor, a small pile of debris at the water's edge, the brewery, and many other small areas still smoldering. Further upslope, the grasses are still burning. A heavy cloud of smoke hangs over the entire area like a death veil, separating what is above from what is below. We will not be privy to all the details on the ground at the moment. It is interesting to note the fact that the survivors cannot tell the world what transpired because there is no access to the internet or the ability to make telephone calls. We are, instead, continually fed information from people who had no first-hand experience with the event, and are simply mimicking whatever controlled message is being released. Released by individuals that have exhibited rather questionable decisions during this disaster. Still images do not provide the impact that actually being there can convey. Video captured that day on the ground finds fires still burning throughout Lahaina. Survivors are exhausted, some of whom have gathered along Front Street. The streets are littered with debris, downed power lines, tin roofing, and dead animals. Contrary to official statements concerning the number of people that have perished, there are also human remains all over the area. The damage to homes and business is beyond belief, as is the damage to the infrastructure. None of this will be reported until later when they are released as individual facts. No one has consolidated the data in one place and reported it to the public. It is simply unbelievable that a natural fire could physically accomplish the level of such damage. As early as the 9th or 10th, some non-Lahaina residents were commenting on the event.
We've all had a haze over our islands. Every county now has confirmed there's been a haze over the island since Sunday. We had 65-mile-an-hour winds, bro. Why this thing not blowing out? Because aluminum oxide is heavy as shit, and it'll just settle right on the ground. And they said had blue flames burning the buildings over there in Lahaina.
Before we close out this part, there is an additional fact to consider, which may have influenced the development of the fires. On November 8, samples were taken of the ash and sent for analysis to Torrent Lab Incorporated in California for analysis. Results of the analysis were returned. On December 10, the Hawaii Department of Health issued a statement based upon those lab results and pronounced a warning citing high levels of arsenic, lead, antimony, cobalt, and copper in the ash. What they did not indicate was that other, highly flammable substances were also detected at much greater concentrations than any of the identified toxins that were reported. Aluminum, for instance, was found at levels ranging from 37 to 44 times the concentration of arsenic. Although aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, it is never found free in nature. All of the Earth's aluminum has combined with other elements to form compounds, like aluminum oxide. Aluminum burns rather explosively and is white-hot after ignition. As it burns, it transforms into aluminum oxide, which is not flammable, but if actually burned, gives off a bluish flame or light. Aluminum is also very detrimental to human health, perhaps even more so than arsenic. Magnesium was found at levels 34 to 37 times that of arsenic. Magnesium also burns rather intensely and gives off an extremely bright white light. This concludes Part 6, a sequence of events. Please understand that this presentation is not all-inclusive. It only contains that material which has come to my attention. With the release of the first report from the Attorney General, more facts have come to light. This may require an additional part as an update later on.